Well, good morning everybody. It's a bit of a damp but chilly morning in the Meadowcraft workshop. What I'd like to do today is just to do an overall review of my record power WG200. How I found it. Now I've been using it for 4 or 5 weeks. Its pluses and some of its negatives, and there were some negatives and I had to take some remedial action, which I'll show you. Simple fixes, but nevertheless I was a bit disappointed when I discovered the problem. So I'll press my little gizmo and we'll get on. Well, here we are. As I've already said, there are lots of pros with it. It's worked very well on my carving gouges, medium and large size. It's worked extremely well on my very old and rusty lathe tools, which I've been trying to sort out for ages, and I'm actually getting quite a good, even polished finish on them. Where it's let me down a bit is when I've been looking at sharpening knives. The problem stems, I believe, and I think I've proven, from the fact that this is an 8-inch wheel, and all the tools that Record Power supply, this is the they call small knife jig, which is for blades under 4 inches. They all are made with the bigger wheel in mind. So gouges, not such a problem, and straight edge, not such a problem. Certainly it's just straight carpenter's style chisels, no problem. It does put a hollow grind on them, but when you're a hobbyist rather than a serious carpenter or a cabinet maker, then really a little bit of hollow grind doesn't make any difference, long as you, as it were, flatten it off with a good stone or diamond stone, and make sure that the reverse edge is absolutely flat. But try and avoid rambling on, people are shouting. But the problem I've run into is that despite this being adjustable, there is a limit to the adjustment, and raising it up beyond that limit means it's insecure and you can't lock it. So there is a minimum point, which, believe it or not, is obviously level with the shaft as it comes through, which gives you insufficient rise on the tool to be able to bring it up high enough to lessen the angle for a very fine angle on the stone itself. And fiddling around and trying to use angles and colouring the bevel and checking the stone, etc., meant that whenever I was getting near to the edge, I don't know if you can see that here, I was touching the stone, and that pulls the knife out of square, messing up the tool, and you can see when you turn it over to do the other surface, you're running into the same sort of problems. So what I reasoned, that's a word that doesn't often come into my vocabulary, is that the tools have all been set assuming that the stone is going to be about that much higher, because it's a 20-inch stone. This is 8, so obviously on the point of contact there's 1 inch difference, and to get anywhere near it you've got to raise the support bar here above the locking screws that hold it steady. So the result is that you just can't, even if you held it, you're really facing a problem. Now I've put There's a little roughing knife. It was a broken off sheath knife, I suppose, but I was trying to put a grind on it, and if I put it at, if you like, its maximum height, that it will meet the stone, and it's still touching on the back edge, I'm outside of the locking system. So I sat down, believe it or not, with a pencil and a piece of paper and worked out one or two things, and I thought fundamentally I need to lengthen this, and the only way I could do it was to purchase some tubing, 12mm, and put it on the end with a small, these haven't been secured in yet, with a small tube that will lock into the holder. Just drop that down, because I've sharp edges there. As I say, I've only just literally put this up for experiment. So I've held the tubes in place, and what that's given me is the ability to adjust, raise and lower as I need to make the angle. And here you can see it's now too high, so I need to drop it down. I made the tube approximately 1.25 inches, just to give me that extra leeway. And there I'm touching the stone at possibly still a slightly too steep an angle, but I can fiddle with my tubes by some sanding and just cutting away the top of the tube to give me a little bit more downward play. But as you can see, that's achieving, bearing in mind that the wheel is going to be turning this way. That's going to give me the angle of address, I think is the right term, without it digging into the stone. So that seemed to solve that problem. I then faced the problem of not being able to reach for the smaller knives, say a flex cut carving knife. And even if I put that in there, if I shorten this, which of course you've got that adjustment which you've lost when this is up to at its maximum, even if I put that blade in, I'm going to have difficulty. I can't secure this too tight because I haven't adjusted the central wheel here to make the balance grip. But just for the sake of showing you, even if I shorten it, it's way out of kilter. If I lengthen it to its maximum and still give it some grip, he says hopefully, yeah, I'm still far too steep on the stone to get the right edge. So I did look at a competitor for this type of tool, Tormek, who have a small knife jig, as they call it. I don't know, I'll show you. And all it is, it's an extension arm that you set up in your small knife jig, and you then put your blade into the holder, all a bit fiddly. This is where in Blue Peter they say, oh, here's one I've done before. So I hope you're still with me. So that grips the handle. You make sure that it's at right angles, and you've got a nice metal bar to eye it, to make sure that it's square to the cutter. You then adjust the blade by tilting this bar so that the blade edge becomes at right angles to the stone, and you can see you just fiddle it backwards and forwards. Now, using this jig, I will have to shorten it slightly to get the right angle. So I'm using the jig adjustment, which was lost to me in the previous setup. I have also discovered that the stop screws can get in the way. So here I've got a bit of a compromise to be able to achieve the angle that I need against the stone. I need to bring that up down just a fraction. There we go. Now, I'm not suggesting that this is a perfect fix. I'm just actually raising the bar a bit, but it works for me. There are some further adjustments that I'm going to have to make to achieve exactly what I'm hoping for, and that is some simple adjustments. Here, what I'm going to have to do is just drill and tap two little, I'll probably use hex screws, just to make a locking device. And after I've got the fine adjustment on here, moving it up and down, what I can do then is I'll be able to lock it in place and use, as the instructions suggest, this for your micro adjustments, allied to the double micro adjustment of shortening and lowering the tool jig. So it's not perfect. It has some drawbacks, but it does provide an answer, and I'm a little bit disappointed. And what I said why I was disappointed is that Record Power don't actually comment anywhere that the tools that they cite as being recommended when you actually buy the 200, it doesn't actually remind you that they are really made compatible in total with the 10-inch wheel, not the 8-inch wheel. They even recognise that there is going to be a big difference, because they actually put on your setting gauge here a way of setting the master, that's the white plate, to agree with the stone. And obviously even a 20-inch wheel is going to drop as you level it off, and it is going to lose its size. So they actually give you from the 10, which is the norm for the gauge. I'm going to slacken it all off because I set it hard when I was when I got it. So that's got a little line that marries up to a grading here, and that's set for 10. But obviously, to compensate as the wheel wears down, they've changed the plate, and you've got a 9-inch and a 7-inch and a 6-inch. I think you'd probably replace the stone before that, but it's really there to compensate for the difference in the stone. So the 8-inch, sorry, I'm totally short-sighted as well now. The 8-inch gauge means you set it to 8-inch and lock it up, snug it up. So now the degrees of angle on here are correct. Now the only problem that I found with that is the minimum degree of angle is 15 degrees, and if you were sharpening one of the small knives, where you'd be looking at maybe 6 degrees per side, giving you a 12-degree cutting angle or less, it's a question of estimation that you can't really move beyond 15. So not that I would use that tool for setting a cutting angle on a carving knife, but what I would do is the really old traditional idea of just putting some black felt tip, indelible marker just along the bevel, and then by adjusting the height, and that's why that micro adjustment is so keen, just by turning the wheel against the blade, or it's easier if you do it away from the blade. Being left-handed, I would probably start from this side anyway. You just turn the wheel and you judge how close your angle is and use the micro adjustments just to move it up and down. And that way you're replicating an angle that's already there, and if you, like me, have been hand sharpening on diamond stones and water stones, you are likely already to have changed the angle, so it's best to work with what you've got and what has worked in the past. Because as a carver you're already used to it. Okay, enough about knives. I hope that rather rambly explanation puts it in, but I do actually make knives as well, and here's a little skinning knife on a reused Mora blade. It was, I found it a scrap bin, to be honest. Somebody had just thrown it away. Rather a nice bit of burr I had, so I just stuck that in. And obviously the jig, if you can set the angle, is going to be brilliant for this sort of work. But as I said, you've got to be able to set the angle, and then you've got the freedom to hold it square against there and just lift out of the blade and keep the angle nice and consistent, and then you can hone it, give it a nice really polished look, because if anybody was going to buy it, they all loved the polished look. Although I have to say that with carving knives, a little tiny bit of not wire, you've taken the burr off and the wire, but just a little bit of roughness on the edge doesn't come to any harm, because most carvers fine finish with abrasives anyway, and some people like to leave the cut lines in. Okay, rambling on about that, the next thing I wanted to look at was the use of the tools for gouges. Now, I've already said that I was very pleased with the use of the gouge tool, which is here. Not the easiest thing to try and demonstrate when you're there, but I did find that their description of a medium tool is about that length. And as you can see, this I picked up in a car boot for I think 25 pence. It was totally rusted. I've cleaned it up a bit. It's no maker's name on that. It does have a maker's name, Isaac Maddock, Castle Street, and I presume it's Sheffield. So it's quite an old piece. I had an old handle which I just put it on, and it's come up really well. I mean, I hope I don't know if you can pick that up. That is really a very polished and very, very sharp edge. Or a previous owner has really abused it, and it's been ground off, almost trying to make a V chisel out of it by the look of it. But gradually I'll just be wearing it back, and until it's at 90 degrees. I don't want to overdo it because it works quite well as it is, so I'm quite happy with it. And this jig, I'm sure you're all familiar with. You just set it in. I'll turn it sideways. Maybe that makes more sense. You turn it this way. You adjust the bar in and out until you can address the angle. So you can address the right angle, and then you can just run the stone and just turn it coarse to start with. I do actually just hold it against the stone lightly just to keep it balanced, and just rock it around the stone, and that works fine. Again, it's to do with the adjustment. As you can see, for this to secure properly, I hope you can see, it's got to go into the beveled area, because then that makes a secure lock against the tool. The problem that you've got is if you wanted to use a micro chisel, you are then going to run into problems of length and reach and settings. So if I put that into the holder, it's not as secure. It's quite difficult to get it to lock, and then you're faced with an incredible problem. You instinctively want to go on the other side of the bar. So this is really hopeless for a micro chisel. Having said that, the competitor has obviously thought of this problem, and for an extortionate amount of money, when you compare how much that cost, how much more would it cost to just put a because all this is a V in it which fits over the bar and gives you a lot more reach, and it's also shaped so that if you have some palm chisels have a holder, a collar around there, that will sit nicely in there. But you can set this into your jig much more securely, and in fact now this is I need to move this out, and with your micro adjustment there you've got that extra reach to be able to do the small chisels, which is I think I may have mentioned in some of my introduction videos to the record power. The reason I secured this was unfortunately I've had a stroke. It's left my left hand, and I'm very left-handed. As you've probably seen me stumbling around here. It's got a tremor in it, and if part of sharpening on a diamond stone is that you've got to really develop a good muscle memory. And says he looking around, well, everybody knows. Imagine this is just a flat diamond stone. You hold your chisel against it at an angle, and I work it like that. Some people work it backwards and forwards, but the essential thing is being able to lock your arm and hold a consistent angle, and you can see what's happening. I've got this tremor, which as I tighten up my muscle to try and make that, it becomes impossible. So I was just knackering all my chisels and knives and God knows what. So I thought, well, rather than give up on it, you know, carving is a way of life for me. So without carving, I just can't imagine. So what I thought I would do is sell my soul and go in for an affordable, well recommended piece of kit, and Record Power is. Overall, yes, it does what it says it's on the tin. It's amazingly cheaper than its main rival, Tormek. It even in their most expensive one, which is the 20-inch wheel, that's the WG250. This is the WG200. Yes, it does what it says on the tin. It's certainly helping with my tremor problem, and it means that I can carry on carving. I don't work on really fine detail as much as I used to, but then so what, you know? A pussycat's a pussycat, whether it's a caricature shape or whether you can see every whisker, etc., on its face. But I found I can carve to satisfaction, and my customers are still satisfied with my work, so that's pleasing. It does help with honing. It does help with a shaped honing wheel, which I bought as an extra. That all works, and it certainly helps with just taking off the burr, but also just putting a little bit of an edge, which is what I like, just a little bit of angle on the inside edge, so when I turn the tool over and maybe around a carving where it's necessary, I find that works better than keeping it absolutely square without the inside having a little bevel on it. So yeah, that's all the positives. The negatives I've already highlighted. It's not really intended. I don't think it was ever really intended to look after little tiny knives. That's just a peculiar need that I have developed after my stroke, because in truth, once you get a good edge on a tiny knife, you're really stropping it to bring up the sharpness. You're not really regrinding, but unfortunately there are problems with stropping even in producing a really fine edge. So I do use the bar here with the old marker pen trick to set the angle. I do use that to buff them up, and that is yeah, I think it's a leather compound. It's not really leather, but as you can see, it does bring up a really good polish, and for those who like a polish, it takes out the stone marks, and you've got the flexibility of the shaped wheel. I would say that if you buy this, definitely buy this as part of the kit, even if you decide not to take the other jigs and tools, because I have found talking to some turners that they say, well, you know, we're used to grinding on a DMB or DBN wheel, which doesn't produce heat, and with turning tools, they're not so keen on a really bright polished edge, because it doesn't matter as long as the tool is sharp, i.e. that the plane meeting the angles are correct. The tool is very efficient, because the lathe is producing the spin that's taking off the material, whereas knives and my gouges, they have to be flexible in the stroke, if you see what I mean. When you're using this sort of chisel, you'll be turning and you'll be lifting, and you'll be coming steeper. All those actions, which is not so important when you're just turning wood, and it's really your expertise at moving it in and out, and the choice of the shape of the tool that you're offering up to the wood. So the next steps are securing my little stops. I'll probably use araldite to start with, and see how we get on. I'll certainly be drilling to put in my stops. What I might do is just cheat. I'll make it the same bore as this, and use that. Why not? This bar is actually flattened, so when it's sitting inside, there's plenty of adjustment on it. I did find that there is a discrepancy, but I would suggest that's with all tools. This bar actually is just a tiny thou over 12 mil, and when you get milled pipe at exactly 12, it wasn't very comfortable. So what I had to do is, in preparation for having a grip, I just put a little flat plane on there, only with a file, and I'll polish it up, make it look pretty again, to correspond with this flat, so it will lock. So that might be a hint. I have read in comments about the tool that some people find when they're using an enclosed tool, you know, say for a flat edge, that it isn't terribly smooth, and it can judder a little bit. I think that's really to do with tolerances of the roundness of the bar against the bore of the tool, and you know, they're cast. These haven't been turned on a lathe, so there is discrepancy. So out with some really fine paper, and just smooth up that, and you maybe have to just find a piece of dowel, 12 mil dowel, and just clean up the inside of the bore of the jig, so it'll slide up and down. So I hope that's of help. The other comment that I will make now is that the stone itself is excessively aggressive. They don't actually put any grit indication on it. They do talk about using the leveling stone, not the leveling stone, the conditioning stone, to produce 80 grit with this side, and they're talking about well, they're talking about 400 and plus on this. I found that really that is very aggressive. If I was going to live with this machine forever, I think once this stone is worn down, I think I would look at replacing it with, well, hate to say it, but I would replace it with the one of the Tormek wheels, 8-inch wheels, which they cost the earth, but they are possibly less aggressive than that. But you know, aggression isn't a bad thing if you're prepared to strop properly and you're not over aggressive with your tools. You just lay your tools gently on it. It just works quicker. I have to say, I loathe sharpening. I had a very good friend with me last night who is talented in many ways, and he comes over. He's been well, he's flattering me totally by saying that he's a turner. He works in glass. He's a very talented and a great photographer, but he wanted to take up carving, and he did say that the biggest thing that he was frightened of was really getting tools sharp, and he's very happy to give carving a go. So he's got some lovely little micro tools that, to be quite frank, he's picked up in car boots and things, and they do need a lot of work. So he's entrusted me with his tools to experiment, and what I'll do is maybe when I've sorted out all his tools, I'll come back to you and give you a final overview. Is it worth the money? Yes, it is. Does it have some little problems? Yes, it does. But if you're of a practical mind, you can overcome them. Are there accessories limited? No. If you've got a 20-inch stone, I've found no negative comments in any of the websites about the jigs. In fact, they've just been complimentary because they're the same as and so much cheaper than Tormek. But because of the size of the stone, the 8-inch, and its compatibility with the WG250 tools, you do have to make some adjustments. So if you're prepared to do that, save yourself some money, because that, at the end of the day, what it's all about. For those of us who can afford Tormek, everybody says it's the industry standard. I don't know, I've never used it. It does seem, when I've looked at the jigs, to have thought a little bit beyond the 20-inch stone, and also beyond the sizing of chisels that may need work on a stone. All right, well, I've rambled on. I hope that's of help, and I hope my microphone has worked, and I don't have to redo this all again. I'll probably do it as a voiceover if I do. Got my little gizmo here, so I'm going to press the button, and just going to say finally, thanks for watching, and you're always welcome in the Meadowcraft workshop.